Hello and welcome to SHRP Talk, the show by washed up athletes for washed up athletes looking to be their best self. On today's show, the brothers and I talked a lot about diet and nutrition and the importance of getting food from whole food sources. I get into some specific changes that I've made lately in my own diet and in my lifestyle and how that's influenced the way that I feel and operate day to day. We also get into the importance of just adjusting your diet based on your needs and goals and your lifestyle. We get into the balance between short-term and long-term effects of eating certain foods and living a certain way, and end it off kind of just talking about your environment and how setting yourself up for your environment and also how you're affecting others around you can have a massive impact. So hopefully you enjoy this episode. Hopefully it gives you some things to think about with your own lifestyle, your own nutrition, and hopefully there's some takeaways and questions you can ask yourself as a result. So thanks for tuning in, and hopefully you enjoy. Before we get rolling with today's episode, I want to take a second to tell you about SHRP Training. Snyder Health, Recovery, and Performance Training is an online training platform to help washed up athletes look, feel, and move better. We offer several different group options catered to your needs, interests, and goals, with new programs delivered each month through the Team Builder app. Features include video demonstrations, 24/7 messaging and feedback, and access to the SHRP Edge, a comprehensive guide to upgrade your diet, sleep, and life. Use the code PODCAST in all caps to get 50% off your first month when checking out a program. Iron sharpens iron, so let us help you become your sharpest self. Now let's go. And we're back with another edition of SHRP Talk. Jaden, Brandon, good morning. How are you guys?
Good morning.
Doing well, doing better. Healthy again.
I'm great, Colin. Thanks for asking.
Even after the Niners?
No, now I'm bad again. Now I'm bad again. But their playoff chances are now history. So, no, it's just one of those years, which is unfortunate because obviously, wearing Kittle-sponsored glasses right now. My guy George Kittle, it's hard to waste years when you're at the back end of your career. So I know tight ends can play for a while, but he's taken quite the beating over the course of his career. So very difficult to see potentially a wasted year at this point of his career. And with the trajectory the Niners were on as opening the year as Super Bowl favorites. So thanks for bringing that up.
Doesn't help when you got guys quitting in the third quarter either.
What was that deal?
Just didn't want to play.
Buddy.
Said, nah, I'm good. Maybe next week.
Literally a tied game. That's wild. I didn't see that. Were they talking about that? I had practice last night. Were they talking about that on the air? Or was that a post-game thing that we learned?
I didn't really even know it happened. I wasn't watching very closely, but I just saw this morning like Shanahan and Kittle talking about it. And just
who was it? Was it Greenlaw or who was it?
Devondre Campbell.
Oh, Campbell.
Linebacker. Just wasn't happy with his, I don't know if he's not starting anymore or something about playing time, and got told to go in and just said, no.
Culture is kind of a buzzword, but that seems like the culture is not quite intact if everybody on the team isn't willing to do whatever it takes to win the game. So it's like Mike Tomlin says, they're in the business of winning. So,
well, that's kind of what Kittle was asked too. Like, is there just like a disconnect, or is everyone not getting along? He's like, no, this is kind of an isolated thing. It didn't really affect the rest of us. He's just like, I've never had anyone do that and hope to never have anyone do that again.
Yeah.
But yeah, not good vibes in San Fran.
Have you guys been watching the Hard Knocks in season?
I have not.
Very, very good. I highly recommend to anybody listening to spend some time watching that. It really gives you an in-depth look. A lot of just head coach speaking and position group meetings of in-season matchups. I think the one was when the Steelers played the Bengals, and it covered like both sides of the coin, and that was really interesting. The Ravens had the Eagles matchup, which was massive, and then obviously anytime you get to listen to Jameis Winston, it's great entertainment. So, really, really good stuff. Kind of really gives you an in-depth look at what the players are hearing from the coaches and how they try to motivate. I always think that's fascinating because you've got grown men playing and grown men trying to get them to play harder and all of that. So I don't know. It's definitely certainly worth a watch. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah. I'm more of a preseason Hard Knocks guy. It just gets me excited for football.
When you don't
it just
have
means
games.
Football's in the air, but
Yeah.
I might have to check that out.
It's I always get home late from the gym or whatever, and Paige needs to go to bed, so I kind of just throw it on the TV and kind of puts me to sleep a little bit. Not in a bad way, but just something to watch. Like I said, it's football on football on a weeknight, man. Can't complain about that. So,
not at all. Jaden grinding through classes, home stretch,
week left,
1 more week,
finals week, second to last finals week, I guess. But
dang,
yeah,
about time.
It's nice.
Sick of school.
Yeah, I don't miss those days, but
not at all.
Stay strong, brother. Finish the semester strong, and then enjoy your well-earned break.
Yeah, nothing to it but to do it.
Yeah. Well, we can get into the bulk of the topic for the day. I kind of hinted at some lifestyle, health, diet changes last week, kind of stemming from what Jaden knew. We kind of talked about just toughness in general, and also just sharing your experiences and being vulnerable, and sharing experiences, podcast, whatever it may be. And we hinted at you sharing that Casey and Callie Means podcast on Tucker Carlson, so I'm sure we'll reference that quite a bit, so highly recommend checking that out if you haven't. Also watch our last week's episode if you haven't. It was a good conversation, so definitely check that out. But just that episode in general opened my eyes to a lot of things, not only related to just diet and overall health, but kind of where we're at as a country, and kind of where a lot of those health issues, not just obesity, but like cancer, infertility, dementia, stuff like that, just a broad range of stuff that seem to be on the rise, and kind of what might be causing that. So I don't know where we want to kick off with that. We can talk about some stuff I've changed in my own life because of Jaden, or we can talk about the episode. But
start with just kind of, let's just bridge from the last episode of kind of, you talked about some cooking more and health changes that maybe motivated you to make. Curious, from someone who's kind of had a picky diet for most of their life, and what that kind of has developed into, I guess, how that's evolved over time or even recently. I'd be kind of curious on kind of what habits you're changing, things that you're ingesting. I think sometimes specifics are good. I don't know. Like, had a player reach out the other day, and good to give general ideas of macronutrients and stuff, but maybe even some specific things that you're doing consistently.
Yeah, I think it's just a perspective shift from almost still being in like that, like eating like an athlete era, and also being focused on like numbers, macros, and micros, versus now focusing more on the source of the food. So, and I think this would be relatable for former athletes. Like I felt like I was always, I took nutrition classes and stuff, so I feel like I've always been educated on nutrition, like what macros you need, how you can do that throughout the day, like meal timing, micronutrients, vitamins, minerals. And I guess that was always my mindset, and focusing kind of more on protein, like am I getting body weight and protein, spacing that out throughout the day, with that being the main goal, but then also getting, carbs for energy and healthy fats, getting those micronutrients as well. And like I said, I'm a numbers guy as like a former strength coach and just someone who's always enjoyed math. So it's always been more about, am I hitting those macro goals? Am I hitting those
Yeah.
macronutrient markers? But focusing less on the source, and you can't really quantify source, if that makes sense. Like organic stuff that never, it just felt like it was just more expensive and not worth it. It's like, I'm gonna get my benchmarks, what I'm shooting for. I'm gonna track that, but I'm gonna get it however I can. So like when working in college, usually had access to like muscle milks and different like whey protein sources throughout the day. So, convenience, I would just do that. Take that a few times a day just for convenience. Start with a morning smoothie, skim milk to cut down on fat. At night, usually cook something, but just like beef or chicken from anywhere. But that was really my only cooked meal. I would also do eggs, but I would use like just whatever the cheapest eggs were, and like bacon bits that came in the fridge just for convenience, any source of cheese. So again, just focusing less on the source and more so on just hitting those numbers, to where now, like listening to that episode and different rabbit holes that's taken me on, whether that's listening to them, they've also been on Rogan, or just listening to other people they've mentioned who've been influential to them. And also like her book, I've started reading that, Good Energy, so highly recommend that as well. But yeah, just focusing on the source and the benefit of more organic sources, more whole food sources with less ingredients, and we can get into why that's important as well. But yeah, just focusing more on a whole foods based diet while still meeting those numbers. That's still important to me, like protein and micronutrients and all that stuff. But getting more into, okay, where am I getting this from? What ingredients are included in this? Can I pronounce the ingredients in this? That's usually a good sign. And so, yeah, that's just one area that's pretty diet specific. There's some other stuff I've been doing, just getting down that route. But yeah, that's kind of where it started. And so I guess specifics to get into that, I still eat like, I try to get protein like every 3 or 4 hours. So morning I'll still do a shake, but I'll do kefir recommended by Jaden instead of regular skim milk. I'll do organic berries, organic spinach, and some other stuff. And then I'll do pasture raised organic eggs later in the day with some bacon without any nitrates or carcinogens. Is that the right terminology, Jaden?
Yeah.
And then a better source of cheese. So pecorino cheese, I think, is the one that was recommended to me by Jaden. And then another thing, like yogurt. I'm a big yogurt guy. I would always do Greek yogurt, and it'd be like super low fat. But now I'm doing more whole fat yogurt, flavorless. Which the first time I tried that was,
I was gonna say,
I think I got some on my finger, and I tried. It's like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. It was like super sour, but
sour.
I mixed some like syrup and honey in there with some berries and a little bit of protein. Do you want me to keep going? I mean, that's just
yeah,
a
it's
few
great. No, it's
specific
perfect.
examples.
If more,
Let's see. I also do, for more convenience, I'll do post-workout, I'll do Kodiak pancakes, which Jade and I have talked about. There's still some stuff in there that may not be the best, but there's still, I mean, it's less than 10 ingredients. You can pronounce all of it. And I mix some whey protein in there, and I'll do a beef stick without any of those bad preservatives. Epic beef sticks. Salmon bites are a good one. I'll do that for a
Really?
snack. Get some omega-3s as well as easy protein source.
where do you
And
find yourself kind of getting all of this stuff? Like, is this stuff that you're ordering online through different websites that you found to be good sources, or different places shopping, or curious on kind of how that's changed?
yeah, a lot of it's, I kind of recommend this approach for anyone. A lot of the stuff that isn't as like fresh, stuff that lasts a long time, I guess I will get off of Amazon, and I'll just buy it in bulk. So I bought like 6 weeks worth of salmon bites, beef sticks, honey, syrup. Trying to think of what else. Yeah, just basically anything. Oh, the Kodiak pancakes, like stuff that lasts longer. I'll get them. It's usually cheaper online if you buy it in bulk. So I'll just get a bunch there, and then every week or two I'll go to like Hy-Vee, and it's crazy now when I shop. It's I always heard like the recommended of staying on the outside, never going on the inside, and that's exactly how I've been shopping when I get there. So I'll get like the kefir, the cheese, the organic spinach, organic fruit. I'll get my fruits. So I'll get bananas, pineapple, apples, and then I think the only other thing I've been missing is I get beef from Thousand Hills. So it's grass-fed beef. Jaden hit me up with the subscription plan there, so I get like 12 pounds. I'll do a half a pound a day, so that usually lasts about a month or so. So just had my second order of that. But yeah, it's just more whole foods based, and it's been a little more expensive for sure. And so maybe I can get more creative with different ways over time to maybe make that more affordable as I get more knowledgeable on this. But I think it's having a long-term mindset where I'm going to be ideally with these changes spending hopefully virtually nothing ever ideally on like healthcare stuff. So
Yeah.
obviously you know this with what your wife does, but stuff in like medical related, like medical bills are not cheap. So
Yeah.
just having that mindset of, okay, right now it might be more of a cost, but over the long term, it's going to be worth it. And I think that goes for a lot of things. I think being willing to spend more on stuff that brings you value health wise. I think it's just thinking of the long term benefit of that, where it maybe feels more expensive in the moment, but I think long term you're saving yourself not only money but also a better, higher quality life, which is pretty priceless as well.
Have you, in the short term, felt any differences from mental clarity aspect, from an appetite aspect? I know they talked about like the satiety. Is that maybe the right word, or some version of that word? Of I feel like when you eat truly dense organic foods, your kind of body communicates back to you. They talked a lot about the origin of processed foods and how a lot of in this video, the means video of fast food almost originating from the cigarette industry, and the companies recognizing that the cigarette shelf life, although still present, it was obviously more common in the 60s, 70s, 80s, as that was kind of filtering out because of general surgeon warnings and different things, studies, research done on cigarettes and the effect there, that all of the money they made, they kind of invested into fast food, and how can we almost make this food addictive to a sense that it makes you wanting to come back more because it's not making people feel as full, although they are getting probably plenty of more than enough food, obviously, given the obesity rates, etc., overweight and obesity rates and those climbing. So I think, have you felt any difference there? Like I said, obviously mental clarity stuff, I think that's a big one. Fatigue, tiredness, I think that's something that everybody wants more to improve on, but also from actual eating per meal, have you noticed any difference?
I think that's diet wise, that's the biggest thing I've noticed is, like I said, I still eat in like 3 hour windows, but when I was eating a lot of processed stuff, I'd still have cravings like in between meals. And like here, I've had like Christmas goodies or like Halloween snacks, and I always had cravings in between meals to have that. Don't really have that anymore. Like I feel way more full after meals. And now when I eat at like still those like 3 hour intervals, it's not like I'm starving at that point. It's like, okay, this is just what I do. This is how I like to eat. So yeah, I think that's been the biggest thing I've noticed is I don't have those cravings, and not only like hunger, but also like the hardwiring of just like I need this, almost like an addict in a sense. And I think I had that. It's hard to like see that during it, but I think I did have that, even if I didn't always, like when I was living on my own, I wouldn't buy that stuff, and so I didn't have access to it. But I think getting in the habit of that, I've always still had those cravings. I think what's helped too is cutting down my eating window. So usually eat within a 12-hour window. So I'll do like those 3-hour intervals, and then the last thing I'll eat is that like usually like 6 at night or 6:15, and then I'll go to sleep fasted. And having that like fasting window is super beneficial, even though mine's not super long. Mine's at kind of the low end of that. It's like a 12-hour fasting window, but going to sleep fasted has been really good for me too. I think like my sleep has been amazing. Like my awake time is like 2 or 3 minutes average at night. And so
That's
my sleep
crazy.
has been very efficient. I think related to some other stuff I'm doing too, but that was something going back to like the athlete mindset. Like I would always before bed have
Yeah.
amino acids or protein or something, just something to like ease my mind of, okay, my body's recovering. I can't go this long without protein. If I want to train the next day, I need to be as recovered as possible. And so I need some sort of protein source to last overnight. So I would eat it like as close to going to bed as possible so that my window without protein would just be like that 8 hours of sleep. And now I see it more as, okay, my 12 hours during the day is where my body's in go mode. So that's where I eat all my meals. That's when I exercise. That's when I work. And then those other 12 hours are more so for my body to recover. So less work, less TV, less food. And it's more so just as my body benefiting from being in that fasted state, that more relaxed state of not having to process food or focus on work or training or whatever it is. And I think that's been really beneficial for me, just kind of having that switch, just nutrition, but other areas as well.
Yeah. I know I'd love to have Jody talk about this too, but I know when I was initially talking to her about some dietary changes and stuff, especially from a mental health perspective, like that was one of her first recommendations was like cutting off your intake earlier in the day, like you said, like 6 o'clock, because it's the idea that when even if you eat something that late, your body's still digesting, and so if your body's digesting, it's not resting. It's a different process. They're not the same, and I think that I don't know that everybody understands that. I don't think I ever understood that. Like you want your body to be recovering, but digesting is not recovering. Digesting is digesting. You know what I mean? So I think that's really important on the back end of your day. I don't know if Jaden has any thoughts towards that, but
Yeah, I mean, there's studies, and even you guys know who Brian Johnson is. Brian Johnson is. He's like the longevity guy. Well, he's like multi-millionaire, spending millions of dollars on his health to try and live as long as he can. And part of his daily routine, he stops eating at 11 a.m. just because he knows the earlier he stops eating, the better his sleep quality is going to be, just because his body's so focused on resting and recovering from within and not focusing on like digesting stuff from the outside. So I think that's part of it. And just personal experience, like having a Whoop, being able to track my sleep and just experiment with eating later, eating earlier, seeing how that impacts my resting heart rate, my heart rate variability, and just how I feel in the morning, how I feel that next day. I feel like experimenting with yourself, because we're all different at the end of the day. Like we're all unique. Some of us are wired to sleep like 11 to 7, some are early, some are later. Like you just have to experiment with yourself and see how you feel. But yeah, I agree with a lot of what Colin's saying, and I'm proud of you for taking the leap of faith and trusting me on some of those things. But it's been cool to.
It's all you, baby. It's all you.
It's been cool.
I know it's because like even when I was back in college, like especially when you're trying to gain weight, and I know that's probably the smaller percentage, is probably more of an athlete issue than it is an overall general population issue. But like not only was I drinking protein shakes and trying to sneak in meals like as I was going to bed, like you said, for the same reason Colin gave, but I was like early in my career, my first 2 years, if I woke up, I would get off my top bunk, or I would go to my fridge, and if I had to wake up to go to the bathroom, or if I woke up at all, I was drinking another shake, because like it just made it easier during the day to eat less calories. You know what I mean? Then you're not, all day trying to stuff yourself. So it was like, but also it's fascinating now to think about, okay, maybe I was doing that for my weight gain, but also what negative effects did that have on how my body was actually producing, like from a production standpoint from the mental side of things, but also a performance side of things. Like, did that actually have more negative than I don't know, it was just one of those phases. But like, when you're really trying to perform at the highest level, it's interesting to think about what things hindsight may have negatively impacted you, so that as a coach, like right now it's a little different. Like right now I'm just trying to establish a program, but eventually if the program's in place or whatever, and we're trying to take the next step forward, obviously like a lot of what this video talks about, that means videos, like what you eat is like what you become, like this is literally like it's going to turn into who I am. So our nutrition has a huge impact on how we perform as an athlete. So it's a conversation that is actually probably more important for our kids than less important, but so, as a kid's trying to put on weight or whatever, he's a freshman in high school that's going to play at the varsity level. Like, what is the best strategy for him to put on weight and also make sure that he's performing at the highest level with mental clarity and, all of those things. It's just fascinating, I think. So,
Yeah, I think it always comes back to what your goals are. So like me and Jaden kind of now have similar concepts, but apply it pretty differently. I think like he eats bigger meals every every 5 or 6 hours, Jaden, and he's more focusing on less on protein because he's doing more endurance training and trying to like lose muscle, which is kind of crazy. But for me, I still like strength train every day, and so I still need to recover. And so even though like I have a shorter eating window, and like even though like I said more whole food sources, like I'm still in that window, like still getting like 30 to 40 grams of protein every 3 hours, just because like that's kind of like the protein synthesis time frame is every 3 to 4 hours. It kind of like that U shape, so that's kind of where it dips again. And so it's still a focus on recovery, while muscle is just only one piece of it. So like back to how it used to be, like for me it was always about how can I help my muscles and I guess body recover for tomorrow, and less on every other part of my body. So like you mentioned brain and mental health, it's like how can I get that to recover? Tendons, nerves, like the body is so complicated that you can't just focus on a muscle standpoint how you're going to recover. It comes down to other areas as well. And so like yeah, if you're a bodybuilder, okay, you might need that protein before you go to bed. If your sole goal is to be in the 1% of the 1%, you might need that. If you're an athlete, it could be the same idea. Like if you're doing a tournament and you're playing Friday, Saturday, and you have, 2 games Friday, 2 games Saturday, like that's a ton of stress on the body.
Yeah.
And that's where it's kind of a gray area. Do you benefit more from going to sleep in a fasted state and getting better sleep, or do you get more benefit from eating if you play at Friday night, do you benefit from getting a huge protein and carb packed meal so that you're ready to go the next day? That's where it's kind of gray area. It kind of maybe depends more on the individual. But if you don't do either, I guess, if you don't eat anything after your game Friday night, you sleep terrible, you don't get anything in your body, like you're going to not be able to function that Saturday.
Yeah.
So it's going to change day to day. It's going to change depending on what your goals are, whether you're an athlete or not. It's more so just, okay, what what do I want body comp wise? What do I want performance wise? What do I like to eat? When am I able to eat during the day, depending on my work or school schedule? And then you just got to be educated and make it what's best for you. And I think that's all you can do is just educate yourself as much as possible. And then don't try to copy someone else's schedule. Like if I tried to copy what Jaden's doing exactly, it probably wouldn't work for me. So it's just,
Well, it definitely
doing what
wouldn't.
works for you.
If you did what I did, it definitely wouldn't work. I'm more of like I eat like sometimes just once a day. You know what I mean? But I eat like a very dense, heavy meal like once a day because I feel like I'm more in like the primal aspect of things where I feel like plenty of energy stored up right now. You know what I mean? So I feel like I'm not expending a lot of energy. Like most of what I do, like I'm not working out religiously right now. About to start the sauna, which will be a different beast because I'll need to nourish from that. But like most of the energy that I expend is just on the court right now. So like my week long actual energy output isn't very high. You know what I mean? So, and I feel like I have stored up energy. So for me, like I find myself eating like once a day, but one big meal once a day, sometimes twice, right? Where it's a lunch and dinner, or sometimes it's just a big meal at 6 o'clock. So, but again, that wouldn't work for you because you're constantly putting out more. So it's interesting.
I mean, it's
Yeah,
really
go ahead.
it's really understanding like there is a calories in, calories out perspective to it, but yeah, there's so many factors involved that it's not black and white. Like based on how much protein you eat, your body needs to digest that, and you burn more calories based on the thermic effect of food. And then you're not necessarily trusting a lot of calorie trackers because a lot of them overestimate, and you're not necessarily tracking like activities throughout the day, like doing dishes or walking to get groceries, stuff like that, that actually has more of an effect than what maybe like a half hour of exercise has. Like the more active you are throughout the day, typically like burns more calories than what you would do in a workout. So it's like trying to account for a lot of different factors based on burning calories. Because yeah, if you're a kid in high school, you're pretty active throughout the day, and they're not necessarily tracking what they're eating. Like they can tell you they eat a lot, but a lot is different to one person and the next. So just trying to get a baseline for how much you're eating. And yeah, there's been studies that have shown you can eat 100 grams of protein in a meal and you'll use all 100 grams. Like we used to think there was a max or a ceiling to how much protein you could eat in a meal, but studies have come out and show that it's just a longer digestion window, and you'll still get the benefit of eating that many proteins, so or that much protein. So like just planning your meals beforehand and not trying to play catch up at night, I think is really important, because then you do get into the sleep factor. So I think planning, education is all really important towards that. And I think alongside the muscle health, I think people overlook the health of hormones and what nutrient deficiencies can do. Like we see the effects of lack of testosterone in men or estrogen alterations in women, and even stuff like thyroid stuff that's really important that you don't necessarily see, and you can't really see until there is a deficiency. You don't know you're lacking until maybe you're starting to lose hair, maybe you're starting to like your metabolism gets altered by thyroid, either hyper or hypo, and just a lot of different things that you don't really think might be related to your diet or nutrition, and they are just silent killers that it's hard to know without being educated. But that's why you kind of need to take this step to see, what am I eating? How many calories is this? Am I getting enough nutrients through this? Is the food I'm eating quality enough to have those nutrients? Just stuff like that. It can be a big process, but that's why you either try to do that yourself or ask for help, because it is important, and you only need to do it one time and then you're set up for the basically rest of your life. You have that education and it's not going to waver. And just finding foods that you enjoy and can stick to. Like it doesn't have to be a daunting process. Like people fall apart from a diet because they get sick of eating and they want to go back to the processed food that tastes good. But just finding meals that you like, you enjoy. Like I have this weird trait where I can be like super consistent eating the same thing over and over and over again. So just finding your knacks. Maybe it's you finding a bunch of recipes, different recipes that you enjoy, but yeah, it differs for each individual.
Yeah, back to kind of the qualitative versus quantitative. a lot of this stuff, especially as a young person, you don't see, you get a lot of benefits from that qualitative perspective that I talk about of just trying to get your, protein, micronutrients, whatever it is, or even just not worrying about that at all. And like we have world class athletes who have terrible diets, but are able to get away with it in spite of that from an athletic perspective. But I think eating that way for long periods of time, especially as you age, as you are less active, I think that kind of comes back to haunt you. And that's kind of, I think, what we're seeing in our country. It's happening more with younger individuals, but people who have been eating this way for a long time are now, we talked about like cancer rate, infertility, Alzheimer's, dementia, just stuff like that that are constantly increasing. I think it's a lot of that is related to diet and what they're eating, as well as other lifestyle habits. But diet is a huge piece of that. And so it's kind of back to what we talked about last week of that short-term versus long-term mindset. It can be really hard, especially when you're young, to see what effect eating a certain way might have. Like you can get away with it, you can feel fine, you can get through your day, but I think it's thinking about 20 to 30 years ahead. Where do you want to be health-wise, which can be really hard to put into perspective, but just thinking of your future self and where you want to be. And I think I've started to have that more of that mindset. I've always kind of had that like exercise wise and other areas, but now it's more so diet, which is a huge piece of that. So I think it's just having that long-term mindset. And like you said, Jaden, just finding something that is sustainable, something that, don't change for 2 weeks and then fall off the wagon because you want to go back. Just finding something that you can sustain and not be perfect. That doesn't mean you can't have any processed food ever. Like I still treat myself with, a snack or dessert every once in a while or a good weekend meal. I'm going to see Brandon tonight. Hopefully we'll eat something good tonight.
Yeah.
But
Big grubbing.
yeah, it's just on a consistent basis, just being locked into what you're eating. And what's cool, and I think they mentioned this in the podcast, is just because you've been maybe eating poorly or exercising poorly for a long time, that doesn't mean you're lost forever. Like you can, just like even a few weeks of making changes, exercise, diet, kind of back to like the gene talk, like you can flip a lot of the stuff that's going on. It might not be a magic cure for everything, but a lot of stuff can be reversed and you can lower your risk for a lot of things. So like Jody, who we had on the podcast, spoke about like infertility and PCOS, and she attributed a lot of that to her diet. And, she found that just by flipping, like she said that like she completely overhauled everything. I think she's kind of like you in that sense, Jaden, where she can just flip everything and stick to it right away. And she felt the effects of that and she's been able to maintain that. So I think if you're someone who's listening who feel like you've been struggling in those areas, I think it's not too late to make those changes and you can still reap the rewards of making those changes, whatever that looks like, diet, exercise, sleep, whatever it might be.
What are good resources to, and maybe in the short term and long term, that you guys have found for someone who's curious and learning or beginning the process of learning? Obviously, it's hard to consume it all at once with the busyness of lives, right? To, spend a whole 2 days listening to podcasts or whatever on the computer. But are there good resources for you guys that you guys have found, whether it's websites with information or podcasts, maybe for the long run of, you've got to drive here and you got an extra hour, who's somebody that you guys listen to from that type of a thing? Obviously, we mentioned the Means podcast, and I listened to that, and I've certainly been more aware of some of those things. So that really helped me, and I think that's a great start. But what are some other things that maybe people can dive into or look into?
Yeah, I think personally, Mark Hyman's been a really good source. He's a functional health doctor, just similar to what Jody has talked about in the past, looking at things from a holistic view. He owns Function Health is what it's called. They do a lot of like biomarker testing. They do like over 100 biomarkers and it's like $500 for blood work. But it's just, I feel like he's very well known in the space, and he has been doing it for a long time, and has a lot of good things to say, and I've learned a lot from him. I don't necessarily agree with everything Paul Saladino says, but I agree with a lot of things that he does say. So that's been another good one. Both the means have been good. Gary, I guess not really.
How you spell Hyman?
Hyman.
Yeah, and the point isn't that like all none of us have it all figured out, but I think the point of this conversation is just for you guys to continue to just think for yourselves about the things that you're ingesting, and if you're a parent, the things that you're giving your kids, and like Colin said initially, that kids are going to be hungry and they'll eat whatever, especially if it tastes good, right? So kind of having the responsibility of thinking for them and starting to educate them at a younger age. I think those are good conversations to have. I think those are interesting conversations. I think trying to explain why it's better to eat certain things and why you shop at certain places, and I think that can go a long way. And again, I know it's probably difficult sometimes. They don't want to eat certain things, that you cook, but starting to get them to understand the source and the importance of the source and the effects of the source. And I mean, the things that you can change in their life from doing that at an earlier age can be, incredibly important. And yeah, I don't just to think, I went a long time where I didn't care really, it didn't really matter to me. Like Colin said, it was just, am I getting enough? And a lot of that for me was just based off body weight. Like, this is my goal weight. This is what I want to be. I think that I'm getting enough to continue to perform at a certain level, and my weight's still good. So that's good with me, but certainly more interested in all of the other things that are coming with processed foods, with fast food, with that now, and how long are those things staying in my body, and what other systems is that affecting? I think that stuff's interesting. And for, like you said, infertility, testosterone, and overall health and mental clarity and toxins and et cetera is kind of where my thought process is now. So for me, it's like I'm trying to kind of cut back my diet until I feel like I've almost cleared or filtered those things out. Like I said, I'm going to start with the sauna, and I've already kind of started just weaning off like some meals and knowing that, okay, for me right now, since I listened to this video, I'm eating one big meal a day that I know is coming from good sources. I know I haven't felt a lack of energy or whatever. And I feel like, okay, that's the beginning of the process of let's try to clear some things out, that I've had in the past. And like I said, not perfect with it. Still going to have a meal at this restaurant or whatever. And I'm sure that there's, things that they cook their food in probably isn't the best, but overall, from, like you said, from a daily standpoint, trying to clear some things out, filter a little bit, and just see if we can continue to just eat from good sources and eat good meals from good sources. And
yeah, I mean, it's hard. You typically don't find a purpose or find a why until there is a problem or there is something that comes up, right? I think we've seen people that get cancer diagnoses are like the most receptive to lifestyle changes. So it's typically when something comes along that's a problem is when we finally become open and receptive to change. So I think it's finding it within yourself to be proactive and finding the value within yourself to take the next step and do it before it happens. Because we don't want to start to change when it's too late and when we start to finally see symptoms, because we know the cost of the medical field as a whole. And I think it's doing it for the people around you as well, right? It's for your future kids. It's for the people around you to be the best version of you and be the healthiest version of you. And I think it's something you should prioritize and take some time to look into.
Like, since that video, I've been thinking about like my actual brain. You know what I mean? Like, I'll be going throughout the day and like how's my actual brain functioning right now? Like, I don't know. And just thinking about individual systems in my body, like how's my heart actually pumping right now? Is it actually, how's it feeling? Like, is it feeling healthy? Like, I've gone very intrinsic as far as like, not really from a muscular perspective. Like, I've done that my whole life, right? Like, how do my muscles feel? Like, I've been very aware of how my hamstrings, you know what I mean? And like how my biceps and my lats. Like I've been very aware from an exercise standpoint, but it's certainly gone to more of like, how's my brain feeling right now? Do I feel sharp? Like, does my brain feel healthy? Like the actual organ of, I think it's organ, maybe. But like, you know what I mean? Like really, I don't know. That's kind of where my mind shifted. And it's a very interesting process to think about like what's going on inside of you, because it's very easy for us to think of ourselves as like a whole human, you know, and like, this is just Brandon and this is just how I act. And this is, I'm having these conversations and this is what's required from work. But I've been thinking about like my brain and how my brain actually functions and how it creates the words that I'm saying and how it creates how I feel. And I think, I don't know, it's again, it's just self-awareness because of just different things I've learned over time. And I think those things being healthier in the long run is really going to benefit me. So just beginning the process of moving inside my body and seeing how I feel from not just a muscle perspective, but a stomach perspective. I haven't really got there yet because the whole gut thing is very interesting, but you know, our body's complex and has all these different things going on. Like you said, the thyroid glands, and just starting to almost move inside from an anatomy perspective and how those things are functioning and feeling, and how what I consume is what gives that the energy to thrive instead of just survive. So
Yeah, I think that's an important point. I think it's an important question to ask yourself is just how do you feel? And Justin and Jody hit on that when they were on with your diet, like eating something consistently and just seeing how it makes you feel. I think that's not only from like, I don't know, like a gut perspective or do I feel full or whatever. Just like generally during the day, how do you feel energy wise or mental clarity or physically? Like, do you have aches and pains all the time? Or even like reoccurring issues, like do you get sick often? Do you have, I don't know, like they talk about like sinus issues in the book and how that can be reversed by what you eat, just little things like that. And I think we've hit on this before too, like there's so many people whose normal is, it shouldn't be normal, like they're just so used to being in this state of chronic fatigue or chronic illness with whatever that looks like. And I think it's just looking in the mirror and just asking yourself, how do you actually feel? And then, yeah, educating yourself and trying out those changes and not just trying it for a day. There's not much you can do where you can just flip it in a day. You know, exercise might make you feel better afterward, but there's a lot of things that take time. So it's finding those habits and then sticking with those habits. And then, okay, you do something for a month, 6 months, a year. Okay, how do I feel now? So it's just continually checking in, where that qualitative versus quantitative. And that's more of a qualitative thing, just seeing how you feel right now. And then, yeah, making adjustments from there. And I think I've hit on how I've tried to shift to more of that quantitative perspective, but I think there's still qualitative things you can measure from like that whole food source. So we've talked about like blood testing, and I think that's something I really want to get into is,
yeah,
okay, I'm making those changes and maybe I track it day to day, but if I look at, blood work and I get all these different markers, I can see, okay, maybe I'm doing really well in these areas, keep going, or maybe there's just one or two things that are off, and now I can make tweaks to my diet or lifestyle to improve that. Or maybe there's a whole lot of dysfunction, and then I need to look in the mirror again and see what I need to do to get that right. So I think that's something I'd love to do at some point. And a lot people who like get physical, I don't go to the doctor often, which I don't know if I should say that, but a lot of people like routine physical, you can do blood work during that. So I think just talking to your doctor and asking about getting blood work done. And there's some other at home tests and stuff you can do that are a little more expensive. So I think it's just, if you're not sure where you're at, even if you feel good, I think I think that'd be a good step to just see what's your body actually telling you where you're at. So it's a blend of quantitative and qualitative, just using both to kind of see where you're at.
The other cool piece too is like, I even noticed this. I listened to this video on the way to Lincoln for a tournament, and then I found myself like, as I was coaching, like putting myself more into the player's shoes of like, why are they making this decision? It kind of like deepens the decision-making process of like, what were they actually thinking? You know what I mean? Like it's moved me from not only like how my body's acting and responding or whatever and thinking and making different decisions and, you know, all of the different systems of my body working together, but also like the same thing for other people too. And it kind of almost gave me more grace for like the decisions that other people are making too, like putting myself in their shoes, like how is their brain working? Why are they making this decision? Like, no, okay, they're like actually doing everything that they can do. You know what I mean? Like they're trying to do exactly what I'm asking them to do. And it's almost gives you more grace and then like slows you down. Like I need to do a better job of getting their brain to understand like in this situation, this is the expectation or this is what you need to do to be successful. And so it's kind of, I think it also gives us more grace for other people too and allows them to see them as more complex than simple as far as all the other things that affect their life and how they're feeling and how they're acting as well because of how complex we are as individuals and how all the many different things that I eat and consume and sleep affect how I act on a day-to-day basis. But also that's true for other people as well, especially kids, you know, who don't have the maturity or the experience that I do in life. So I think that was a really unique experience too. And it's like, it kind of slows things down and it almost makes it more fun because you're like just tackling each problem as it comes and you're more present with each person that I interact with. And that's just like my situation as far as like the people that I work with and interact with. But I'm sure that that probably would be the case for whatever your job is. You know, if you have coworkers or whatever, it's like, you know, they're a complex human being as well. That's kind of all these different things are affecting them and you may not know all of them, but I think it gives you more grace for like, how are you doing today? You know, like, you know, what are you working on? Like, anyways, it kind of opens your eyes to maybe those other things of what people are working through and how their body's feeling and acting. Not that you need to like know all that stuff, but just that we're all kind of going through the same process. And there's so many different factors that can affect the decisions we make and the conversations we have and the mental clarity we have. And, you know, we're all having those internal conversations with ourselves all the time. And, you know, how's that person really doing? And like I said, it kind of slows you down and kind of gives each day a little bit more meaning and that the things that you do today really affect you. And, you know, people are not always, you know, doing well at different levels, right? Some people are doing well and some people are not doing well. And it kind of can open the door to that. And I don't know, it's just something I noticed from just a health thing, you know, and maybe that's just me making health changes and being able to be more aware of those types of things because I'm in a better state, you know, and I don't know, but it's just, yeah, continue to learn and pursue this because it's really interesting and it's your body. So you only get one and it's fascinating to see what we can get out of it, what we can learn and how we can engineer it to perform as high as we can, you know, and what's our potential. And I think where it gets to the bigger piece of like, I think we all are really passionate about something. You know, I think all of us have a purpose, something that God created us to really love and to do and to impact the world with. And so, you know, trying to figure that out in other people and their unique gifts and what they can bring to the table. And maybe there's something that's in the way of them doing that. Maybe that environment they grew up in forced them to get this education and forced them to get this job. It's not actually what they love, but they're actually really capable of doing this, you know, and how can we help bring that out of them or whatever. So but again, a lot of that starts with, you got to have your own house in order first, you know, to be healthy, to be able to begin to notice these things in other people so that we can put others, you know, before ourselves and serve where needed and be present for the conversations that God puts in front of us so that, you know, we can potentially recognize him in some way, shape, or form, you know, and sometimes that's helping somebody with their health or their diet or their coaching or how to play basketball, because that breaks down the next door of trust. And then now they trust you more and that begins a relationship. And then maybe that leads to the conversation of why are you the way you are? You know what I mean? I like the way that you do this. Like, why do you do this way? And I do that way because of, you know, my faith or whatever, you know what I mean? And that's, I don't know, like it's all connected, but it's certainly, you can break it down into categories. And I know this is a very important one for all of us. So.
And it's a real issue. Like with kids, like they don't necessarily have the option to go and buy their own food, right? Their source of food is the parents. And I feel like as parents, we want to set our kids up for success. Like we're seeing a lot of ADHD, type 2 diabetes rates rising in kids. And it's like these kids don't have the option. Like they're just getting handed processed food day in, day out, whether that's at school or whether that's at home. And I think it's something that if you struggle to find purpose in yourself, to find your own health journey, looking at your kids and wanting to set them up for success going forward, I think is a way that you can maybe find that value and find that purpose. But yeah, it definitely is an issue. And I don't know what the solution is, but I feel
but also like the difficulty of school, I think, you know, like the ADHD too. And a lot of the meets talked a lot about this, but just difficulty sitting in a classroom for kids. You know, it kind of comes back to my previous point of, I think we're all passionate, especially kids, about something, right? And kids have different real passions. And a lot of times, although necessary to begin their foundation of learning, I think school can be very difficult for kids who, you know, have a ton of energy or whatever, or have different interests in these different categories, and maybe learning about social studies doesn't necessarily align with, so that there's the disinterest, and then it's my kid can't listen in class, and then that leads to, you know, ADHD medication, all that stuff. And that's like a bigger, interesting piece, you know, especially coming from a father who was an educator or principal for 39 years, now retired. Shout out Tim. I think that's public knowledge. Soon to be. But I think all that stuff's interesting. You know, I think he's done a great job of just the importance of teachers and hiring good teachers and being able to keep kids' interest, and how that might end up actually being critical to their lives because they're actually interested in school. And so they're not disinterested or causing trouble. And then, you know, if they are disinterested or causing trouble, then they end up on medication, and that actually negative affects their growth process or all these other different things in their body. And it's a very critical time of lives. And obviously, certainly nutrition is a very large piece of that.
Yeah, environment is everything. And as adults, there's a lot we can control with our environment, whether that's the food we have in our houses or the people we surround ourselves with. There's a lot we can control. But for those who are younger, there's a lot that's out of their control with their environment. So their household, their school, or who their coaches are. So I think it's, for us who are older, it's starting with ourselves, setting ourselves up with a good environment so we can be our best selves, and then also whoever we're serving, whoever we're working with, especially if that's a younger population, also making it a good environment for them to be their best self, whatever that looks like, nutrition or just their day-to-day life. So yeah, that's a big piece of it, and just something to think about. So cool, fellas. Anything else?
All Gucci, man.
Go check out those resources we mentioned here, and educate yourself, and just ask yourself some questions. That's all you can do. Just try to learn something new every day and go apply something. So if nothing else, fellas, till next time. Thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoyed today's episode, leave a rating, review, or tell a friend to check us out. Be sure to follow us at SHRP_training for more content to help you be your best self. Go be great today.